Welcome to Bill and Rob's An Excellent Adventure. I'm Bill Tilley.
And I am Rob Schulte. And today, of course, Bill, we're hitting up Kingquels once more with our buddy Graham Young. Now, Graham, you weren't
nice
here
to be here.
You weren't here for the first episode of Kingquels because we were like, we got to bring you on for today's special event. And that is Edward Furlong capitalizing on Terminator 2 in another sequel called Pet Sematary 2. Graham, of course, co-hosts Pumpkin Spice Podcast with me, which you can also find on patreon.com/Bill and Robs. And Graham, we've got an upcoming new season starting next month that'll be in the public feed as well. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, and it's a really fun franchise that we're picking apart.
Yes.
I don't want to give it away. We haven't given it away, have we?
No, well, we might have. Yeah, we're gonna watch all the prophecy.
I can't
movies.
remember.
Yeah, we're watching all the prophecy movies, and it's gonna be a great time. So,
as long as Chris Walken is there.
Yeah, Bill, do you want to come on? We've got one more prophecy movie to record. Will you be our guest on it?
Sure, I can do that. I mean, and I want to be clear with everybody in case you've heard something wrong. This is Kingquels, not Kingquels. That will be our next series, all about bad B movie.
Leatherface, but not movies. That Leatherface.
No,
you know?
Not if there's anything wrong with that. Unless it tries to kill you, then there's something very wrong with it.
Yes, sequels to Stephen King movies that were not books. Beautiful. So it's a high concept here at Bill and Rob's An Excellent Adventure. We got to say hi to Boba in the chat. Never seen a prophecy movie? Guess what? You don't have to.
Me either. We're together with this, Boba.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's a great time. We're talking Pet Sematary 2 today, and before I read the back of the VHS box, I got to tell y'all, I love the first Pet Sematary movie. I actually am a pretty big fan of the remake, too, that came out a few years ago. I've read the book. I've listened to the audiobook. Michael C. Hall reads that, which was cool. Dexter himself. And then on a plane last year, I watched Pet Sematary: Bloodlines, which is a prequel. And let me tell you, not very good.
Well, you know, when you inject into the colon a subtitle, it never really goes all that well. It's an uncomfortable situation.
Graham, did you watch Bloodlines?
No, I haven't. I was going to ask you what year that came out.
I think 2023.
Okay, so it's pretty recent.
Yeah, it was a direct to Paramount, I think, streamer. And gotcha. I mean, that's fine. Movies do that all the time now.
Sure.
But it was just like David Duchovny's in it at one point, and he might be. There's some other folks in it, but it's just not. It's not well thought out. Some of the same things, like in the way that this movie maybe misses the mark a couple of times, it misses the sport. Like it's not. We're not covering Bloodlines. I just have to say that if you're thinking about watching it this Halloween season, you could watch this one instead, Pet Sematary 2, and probably have more fun. So we got a lot to say. Bill, you know we got to read the back of the box. Should I go get the VHS tape?
Yeah, I think you should. The salt mines are calling, Rob, and everybody is anxious to dig into what is sure to be the blockbuster follow-up to the Stephen King masterpiece. That I actually did see the first one, so
interesting.
I was excited to watch this one.
All right, well, let's dive into this. Sometimes dead is better, but the shocking terror that plagued Ludlow, Maine and Pet Sematary is still very much alive in this heart-stopping sequel to the 1989 hit film written by Stephen King. After the death of his wife, veterinarian Chase Matthews, played by Anthony Edwards of Top Gun fame, and his 13-year-old son, Jeff, Edward Furlong of Terminator 2: Judgment Day fame, move to Ludlow to rebuild their lives. Antagonized by the neighborhood kids, Jeff befriends another outsider, Drew Gilbert, who lives in fear of his cruel stepfather, Gus, Clancy Brown of Highlander fame. After Gus cold-bloodedly shoots Drew's beloved dog, the boys bury the body in a local Indian burial ground, a place rumored to have powers of resurrection. When evil is awakened, the boys realize that sometimes you should just let dead dogs lie. Now
Oh,
that
nice.
is a great ending to the back of the box.
That's one over the fence for the back of the box. I
Yeah.
really like that one. Somebody cared. Somebody cared about the back of this, and I like to see that.
Yeah, well, Bobo wants to know if the Ramones wrote the theme. That might be coming up later in this episode because they did write the theme for the first movie. So we'll get there. Overall, I have most of my thoughts in my patented segments. But Bill, I want you, having seen the first one, and then Graham, we can go to you. How were you feeling going into watching Pet Sematary 2?
Underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Underwhelmed.
I would agree.
And I'll tell you,
So going into it, you guys were underwhelmed.
from the very first second of the opening credits,
yeah,
it set a tone because that opening credits is really strange. It's like a Goosebumps opening,
Yes.
or like a really off-brand. I don't know. It's not Tales of the Crypt would be much better, but it was goofy in the way it hit and the treacly. Where I was like, oh, this isn't a good start.
Yeah. Graham, how about you?
Yeah, it was like Goosebumps. The silhouette of the trees was pretty crazy. And then we go right into a B horror movie, which doesn't really have any connection to the first film until it does.
Sure. Did you get a little bit of like New Nightmare vibes from the beginning of this movie, though? Because I did.
Absolutely. And this came out before New Nightmare.
Ooh, that's true. That's true. Because it's what, 92, right?
Yeah, 2 years before Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
I think I might rewatch all of the Freddy movies again this year just for fun.
Call me when you do.
Okay.
You guys let me know how that turns out.
Hey, that was the first series we ever did on Pumpkin Spice Podcasting. What, 2017, Graham? Maybe.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
I watched the Dream Warriors video long before I ever watched one of the actual movies because it was heavy on MTV for about a year and a half.
Dokken.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you've seen Don Dokken face off against Freddy Krueger. I don't think you've lived. I think you've missed a crucial heavy metal meets horror moment that really, honestly, Don Dokken, scarier than Freddy Krueger in that video.
Well,
oh,
Breckenmeyer facing off against a Nintendo Freddy was pretty scary as well.
Graham, your cat doesn't have red eyes, does it?
Well, it might after this episode. We might have a change in, I don't necessarily have to bury it to become a demon of the night.
No.
Well, let's quit burying the lead and get into our patented segments. Bill, as people of Bill and Rob's An Excellent Adventure know, we have a handful of segments we go through. Facts, likes, dislikes, all these sorts of things, but we give them a unique title for each episode of the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about some fun facts we came up with in a segment I like to call Sometimes Facts Are Better. Now,
all I can hear you is doing that in a Fred Gwynn voice. It's in my head. Sometimes facts are better.
I have so much to say about that, Bill, but continue.
Well, Bill, would you like to go first or would you like I? Because Graham always comes up with the magic after we give our facts.
Graham's
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm a pepper. I'm a spice.
Ooh, pumpkin spice.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Bill, you want to lead us off?
Sure. this was a little more fun to look for stuff because, a little more popular, some more people in it was out there. So I found an interesting quote from Jason McGuire, the guy who played Drew in the movie. And he was recounting his experience in an interview. And he said that Clancy Brown, now let's just stop for a minute to tell you this. Clancy Brown, legend, icon. We don't really need to say more than that. If you know, you know. Apparently, Clancy's a bit of a method actor. So once I read that and then remembered what I'd watched, I thought, my God, every day on set with this guy had to be a combination of terrifying and just, I don't even know, maybe exasperating, maybe fun, because he said he would get into character long before the cameras would roll. And I'm thinking, man, what a day to just have completely glassy-eyed, freaked out Clancy Brown just running around your set, probably, eating his Twinkies with his mouth open on the craft service table. I don't
He's a
even know.
big guy.
He's huge. He's huge.
Yeah, he's intimidating as shit, and he can just beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, and it's funny how we talk about the movie, but one of the fun things we do is just think about everything that happened around the movie day to day. How this is your day. You come to set and he's just looming there, half chewed up with a shotgun, just looking intimidating. Had to be a heck of a day.
Yeah, I think method acting is real fun for the person doing it.
Right.
And probably real fun day one for everything else.
Yeah, I mean,
every other
Graham, some stuff when you have your screenwriting classes and teach about, you think the Spicoli method that, Sean Penn did, never got out of character for the entire movie. Call him by his stage name, do that. I mean, what's your take on that?
It's something I said to my students today. Are we familiar with the movie Marathon Man, Dustin Hoffman and Sir Laurence Olivier? It doesn't matter if you are. It's a 70s kind of a classic 70s American New Wave picture. Anyway, there's a scene where Dustin Hoffman has to be stressed out and just kind of nerves racked. And so he goes for a run around the set to get himself sweaty and everything before his heart racing before they do the scene. And Laurence Olivier looked over to him and said, it's acting. Why are you doing this to yourself? All you have to do is turn it on and turn it off. And both are classic actors, choose your poison. But I have to say, I respect method acting, but I see Laurence Olivier's point.
Well, I also remember, I can't remember which stand-up comic it was or which movie, but there was a football movie in the 90s with LL Cool J. And I remember the stand-up comic that was in it with him told in a HBO special they had that LL Cool J would always be running laps and going up and be like, we got a game today. And he's like, I don't have a game. I've got a call time. And he's just out there doing, sprints on the field and just getting into character that way. He's like, no, I'm not going to be sweaty and tired by the time we film.
But it's just going to be to make the day longer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work and a lot of mental and physical, emotion and strength is poured into keeping that for something that's not even being filmed at that moment. Seems like a lot of work.
A lot of work. Well, one of the facts I came up with, I saw that director Mary Lambert stated that the original concept for this film would have involved Ellie Creed from the first story, the eldest daughter. Central character, just following her story after her family died in Ludlow, but apparently execs wanted to capitalize on Edward Furlong and thought that maybe a young teenage boy in a horror movie might sell better than just a continuation, and a new story would be sold better and viewed better than just a actual direct sequel.
A proven sequel star.
Yes, exactly. But I feel like the story might have been better if they would have just stuck to the story.
Could be. I mean, here's a thought for both of you. When you see a sequel and there is no carryover actors from the original, what's your first initial thought when you see that?
Well, I'm not too thrilled, I think.
Me either. I kind of feels like that. I'm worried that, well, we just cheaped out.
But I think there might be, and Graham, I feel like we're thinking the same thing. Maybe we've got that horror movie brain. But I feel like horror movies are like the only exception where people will still be like, yeah, I'll still go see it.
Sure, it's a proven genre that no matter what's going on in the world, everyone wants to see horror films. I was like racking my brain just now, Bill, trying to think of any type of film, not just horror, where the sequel didn't have anybody from the original film, but they carried on the story and it worked. And probably when we end this episode, I'll think of like 2 or 3 examples. But right now, I cannot come up with any off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't either, including this one. But we'll have to figure it out.
That's kind of the thing with me. I can't think of any right off the top, but I'm always like, horror movies are great because I think you're right. That is the genre the most where people will go with it, even if nobody's in it, because you don't always see the first one like I did. You're just, oh, all right, it's there. It's more like once something's been established for a while, like a long running TV show or anything, you almost have to have that handoff to go to the new cast, unless you cut, reboot, and like you said, we're gonna, or just say we're gonna do a different thing. We're just gonna call it the same thing.
Yeah. Well, write in, everyone. Let us know your thoughts. Join the Patreon, and if you can think of one that works, we'll watch it on the show.
Yeah, I would be up for that. I mean, like, again, like when the podcast ends, I'll probably think of like 3 or 4 like really good examples. But right now, like I'm really racking my brain and I can't think of any.
Yeah. Well, Bill, can you think of another fact that you enjoyed about this film?
I can, and it kind of relates to the stuff we said earlier, is coming back to Clancy Brown. I found an interview with him talking about, it's pretty recent, talking about his experience on this movie. And he said that he feels like this movie is more of a parody of the first movie and of horror movies in general than like an actual sequel carryover type thing. Like he kind of like he feels it's like a Scream before Scream. And when he said that, what I'm sure we'll talk about later in this, as the story of this movie unfolds, I could get behind that. I kind of wish it was validated and proven true, because it would make a lot more sense of the things that I saw that made no sense to me at all. Like there's a lot of this time I'm looking at this movie going, I don't know if you're making fun of me, movie, or you're trying to make fun of yourself. You can't be me. I haven't seen you before. So I kind of remember that thought as we go along, because I think you might see what he sees in there too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I like that take. And it makes me actually kind of want to rewatch the movie, thinking about it in that way. But one other little like fun thing I discovered in the movie is that when Edward Furlong's character Jeff goes to the pet cemetery to get back the cat after the bullies, how do I know that one bully, the scarf bully? He's been in so much stuff.
He's the friend in Big.
That's it. Shimmy, shimmy, Cocoa Pop. He's taking the cat. Edward Furlong's going back there, and you see the wagon that Ellie had pushed Gage in the first one. And I know that's like sequel fodder. That's like in Twisters, you see the Dorothy 5 at the very beginning. Twisters! Is that the movie? Is that the movie that's still fun that has nothing to do with the original?
I still need to see Twisters, but that's a great example, Rob.
Yeah. You're right. We've talked about this just in our private time. Rob's is right. Yeah. There are no actors carried over from that first movie in that movie, and we enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it. I had a blast.
I need to see it.
You do, Graham. And seeing it, Austin, if there's still a theater showing it, just go get the big popcorn, buddy.
Hometown hero Glenn Powell.
Yeah, exactly.
King of what apparently is going to be, he's going to be king of the remakes. I'm looking at his schedule.
Okay, so he's doing a remake of Running Man with Edgar Wright. Is that what I've read?
That's what you read.
That's what he read, folks.
Whether it will stay that way, you know how that goes.
Yeah. Well, Graham, did you discover any facts, or was there anything about this movie that jumped out at you as a film or the actors?
I don't know if you all noticed this, and this is sort of more towards the acting, but Clancy Brown does his best Fred Gwynn impression.
Yes.
Right? That New England, to the point where, and maybe I'm losing my mind, but I thought that character had been stuck in a time warp. And it was like present time, but we were seeing him from the past. Like the old man from the first movie was like a dirty cop.
Yeah.
Before, I mean, it was just like it just felt like a decision from Clancy Brown to sort of emulate Fred Gwynn from the first movie. That really stuck out to me.
And they both have like that long face, right? Like,
yes. And tall, intimidating, bigger guys.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. He works the accent a couple of times hard. That's when I most caught it. When he does close-ups and says things threateningly, that I felt like he just was like, here's a little Kurgan for you. You know.
Yeah. He gets Kurgan a lot in this movie, man. Yeah.
Well, I'm Kurgan, you're Kurgan, we're all Kurgan for the next segment of this episode, which is the things we liked in the movie. And I'm calling this segment Wowie Zowie. Now, Bill, you went first last time, so I'll go first this time. Because both of mine kind of tie together. One's a little bit more specific. So I'll just start with the broader one. I think as a film, it looks fantastic. Like it's filmed on location. There's very little like sets. It feels like a world we're actually living in. Now, execution of some of these scenes, not amazing, but it gives us a bigger glimpse at the town of Ludlow. And I think, because I'm a Stephen King fan, I've read a handful of his books. Graham, I know you are too. Like, I think a lot of things that's missed in Stephen King movies is the world building. Like, you really get to live in the area that his books take place in, but the movies never really hit that part very well because of the nature of the medium. And I don't think this movie does a great job, but this tied to the first one give us this like expanded scene that like some of the creepy things about Needful Things or Pet Sematary or whatever are the facts that like a lot, or sometimes they come back, right? The mundane and like how normal most of these towns actually feel. It's not like everyone in Ludlow is like, oh, this town is haunted. Oh, we've got this creepy thing. It's like most of them are just normal folks doing normal things. And I like that we got more of that by like seeing Edward Furlong go to school.
It really struck me watching this right out of the gate. My first thought was there's no paint store in Ludlow. Every place looks so run down. I mean, every single house and every building, just paint flaking, like it's not really been taken care of for 20 or 30 years. I was like, boy, there must not be a good side of Ludlow.
Yeah. What's the main color that you see in Ludlow? Brown. Everything's shit brown.
It's a falling leaf autumn, I believe is what the paint would be called.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Rob.
Is this the same town where they filmed Needful Things? Like, they call it something different, but Is
I
it the
I
same
don't.
wouldn't be
place?
surprised.
No, I think Ludlow is specific to Pet Cemetery.
Okay. The only reason I asked was because the opening shot where they kind of have that scene where it goes uphill towards, I think it's the office, where there's that little shop that's like a V shop where it comes together on the corner and the doors there. It kind of reminded me of the Needful Things store, but I've only seen that movie once a long time ago.
Yeah, Needful Things is in Castle Rock, which is
Oh.
another Stephen King town that
Famed for their
things take-
entertainment.
Yes.
Rob
Uh,
Reiner.
Exactly. All right, Bill, what's something you liked?
Tiger. I
Tiger.
love Tiger the cat. That cat is a fantastic actor. He is on his marks. He acts rings around everybody else in this movie. He is emotive. He responds correctly to situations. He makes Furlong and McGuire look more like the planks of wood than they already are in this movie. And we all know that, we've all heard it. Animals and kids. But I don't know where they got this cat. This cat was great, and he's a little bitty kitten. Now, maybe they had several kittens, and if that's the case, fine. But Tiger, as a character on screen, he meows when he's supposed to. He plays the scene in the cemetery great. He looks a little scared when things are happening, and he's not afraid to get in there. It was just great to watch him.
Bill, you know
The
what they
most
say.
trusting cat ever.
Seriously. And he's quiet, and you can put him in and take him places, and he's just like, I'm good. It's cool. The cats don't do that in real life.
It's a Hollywood rule that it's because probably more than one kitten, because the Hollywood rule is kittens can only work in 2-hour shifts.
They gotta go to school.
Yeah. Then they got to go to kiddie school. And then, there's always got to be someone supervising. Hello, this thing on? Anyway, we're going to go on to the next thing that I liked. And that is, I thought they did a really good, this is where you get tricky when you're making a sequel to a movie like Pet Sematary. The actual Pet Cemetery looked good. Now the move over to the native burial ground, that's another story. But the actual cat on the computer. Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
That's okay. The Pet Cemetery looked good because it is a pet cemetery made by children for children. And this is a cemetery that kids would make. And I liked the way that looked.
Wasn't this the main place in the first movie? Was the Indian burial ground, is that an add-on?
No,
I can't remember.
even in the book, the native area is where everything happens.
Oh,
But
okay.
the only way you can get to it is through the pet cemetery.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's like a blockade. There's
it's that wood block, the things that the kids have to climb up.
You climb. You have to, and it's somewhat. What's the word I'm looking for? Perilous.
Yeah, it's tough.
Sure.
You climb that, then you have to go through a swamp, and then you're at that. That's actually, from what I remember in the book, pretty true to form.
Because I can believe that if you're going to keep young kids out of a place, giving them something they can climb on with a sign that says "Don't do this" is exactly the way you want to do it.
It's an invitation.
Yeah.
It's enabling. This is enabling zombie apocalypses to happen. I blame not only the parents, but whoever's the caretaker of the pet cemetery. Terrible job of signage.
Yes. I believe that would be Fido.
Yeah, I mean, you put on that sign free toothbrushes or, take bath here. That's going to keep the kid out of there. Don't put keep out.
But I do understand, I don't remember the total reasoning, but it used to be just a path you could walk to the pet cemetery. And so some parents got together one day and were like, we're blocking this all up. But Bill, what else did you like about that? What was your wowie zowie moment?
It was Jared Rushton as Clyde Parker. He's I described him in my head as an evil Sean Penn. He gives me just real young Sean Penn vibes. He's super intense. Don't know if he was method acting or he really is that way, but he carried off. And for me, a slight spoiler about how I'm going to feel about the movie. For me, he was the only relatable human in this movie. Not because I relate to him because he's an asshole, and so am I. That's up to other people's interpretations. But he's real, like he's a real kid doing real jerky kid thing, like ultra jerky things. But he's all about just taking the piss out of the kids around him, and he kind of goes about his day, and he's a smart ass, and he's all about him. But he's not stupid, and he's not oblivious. He's just rocking along, and he makes you kind of dislike him so much. It's not that I ever start rooting for him, but I don't mind when I start to see him come on screen, because I'm like, okay, at least we're going to see something that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I give props to Jared Rushton for his performance.
Well, and that scarf was very 1992.
Oh man, he went into the Tom Baker collection and just went a shopping.
Well, Graham, what was something that you really liked about the film? Your wowie zowie moment.
I had some problems with character development that we'll get into in the next segment.
Sure.
But there was something that I really loved, and an actor I really like, Anthony Edwards, for the most part in this movie feels like he doesn't even want to be there, and that's not a character thing. It just feels like he as a person does not want to be making this movie. Anyway.
Yeah.
And are we in spoiler territory?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a scene where he kills Clancy Brown, right? And he starts to leave the house. He goes back in and finishes the other 5 shots in the gun or whatever, just to make sure. And I thought that was so telling of the character. It was entertaining. And again, it just really showed an aspect of that character. I just saw pure evil. Let's make sure this thing is dead. Yeah. And I love that scene. It's my favorite scene in the movie.
Me too. I cheered for him at that moment. Like, finally somebody does the thing you scream at the screen to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just go back just to make sure. And that's for the audience. That's for, I don't know. I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that scene. Everything about that scene is so much fun. I was making a doggy door, leading up to it. Like,
it's got good lines.
Yeah. But let me say, Bill, Graham and I were talking a little before record, and we're just wanting to know, did you get your Anthony Edwards fill this week?
Yes. Great question.
Because Graham and I each independently ended up watching 2 Anthony Edwards movies this week. Pet Sematary 2, and then I watched Miracle Mile, which I'll be recording an episode on for Vanderpump Robs tomorrow.
Great movie.
Yes, loved it.
If you haven't seen it, check it out before the episode.
Yes, please. And Graham, what did you watch?
Revenge of the Nerds. And I want to tell you something right now. Like, as a school teacher, like, we look at movies that are somewhat problematic, and Revenge of the Nerds is definitely that. And there's always a fix to these problems. There's always a way to fix the problem. Sure. And I came up with such a great fix to get rid of these problematic scenes or scene in Revenge of the Nerds that if we ever decide to talk about Revenge of the Nerds, I would love to lay that on you. I don't know if I want to do that now, but I'm just saying I have a quick, easy fix for that movie that will make it perfect. Because aside from that scene, like Animal House, that also has somewhat of a problematic scene, everything aside from those scenes are fantastic. And Revenge of the Nerds is inclusive. It's a really fun, stupid college movie. I have a fix for it.
Well, Graham, I gotta say, I know that Bill has seen Revenge of the Nerds, but Graham, I would love for you to explain, because you're more eloquent than I am about explaining things like this. But why should Bill see Miracle Mile?
Gosh, there's so many reasons. So, first of all, the character that Anthony Edwards plays is just very interesting, but also the everyman that every person that everyone can identify with. But when we look at when Miracle Mile was made, which is 85,
88.
88, like, you know, for everyone that lived during that time or has read Watchmen, we were pretty close to the Doomsday Clock. And as far as accurately depicting the apocalypse in a really interesting way, I would say definitely check it out. Definitely before the episode. I think that you like watching it now, you'll be able to have a lot of fun with it when you hear Rob talk about it for sure.
And Bill, I
Sure.
got to tell you, the basic of it is Anthony Edwards gets a mysterious phone call about a potential nuclear strike. And let me tell you, I think Miracle Mile might be better than War Games.
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is
Okay.
some serious 80s stuff.
I agree with you.
Standing
Yeah.
around over the open Aladdin lunchbox conversation right
Yep.
there.
Yep.
I like it. I will
Yep.
definitely check it out. You know, I like Anthony Edwards. I think he's great. I've actually had Gotcha on my list for a while from 85. That's the one of his that I have not seen yet, that I was sold on the cover and never got to rent it. So
Oh,
I'm gonna have to
okay.
check it out.
Well, if everything we've said about Miracle Mile doesn't grab anyone listening right now, we can also let you know that the writer and director of Miracle Mile wrote Strange Brew. So that is
So yeah.
to be
And
said.
you know,
A
1980,
two-time winner.
Yeah, exactly.
1988, I was 15 years old. And
Okay.
let me tell you, to think that I would be the age I am now and say things like, boy, remember when all we had to worry about was nuclear war?
Yeah, really.
And that's the nostalgic thing, just
Yeah.
blows my mind.
Well, blows my mind. Our next segment. It's the things we didn't quite enjoy in the movie that we felt like we need to point out in a not a belaboring sort of way, but there's always something. And I'm calling this segment "No Brain, No Pain." And,
Great line in the movie.
Oh yes, Bill. Let's go back to you kicking this one off.
Yeah, that needs to be a hat in the Bill and Rob store.
Yeah.
And a bandana.
Sure.
All right. So here we go. This perfect piece of cinema. I'm going to start with the smaller one first. Because I guess. No, I better start with the big one because the smaller one's actually nicer. None of the story or the actors' reactions to anything in this movie outside of Clyde Parker makes any sense at all.
Agree.
None of it.
Yeah.
And that's where I've said earlier, Clancy Brown's parody theory, which it is just a theory. I don't think it is a parody movie. I don't think they said it. I don't think they put the most care into it, but I don't think they were trying to make a parody. I think it just, nobody really also wanted to make a horror movie that badly. And I think this is what you got, because if it was the parody, this movie would be so much more understandable why things are they were. But it was marketed as a horror movie, for sure. Like when you watch a Scream movie, you know what it is. But all these movies, if you asked anybody, and I was back in these days, I didn't have to watch these movies. You say Pet horror movie, Stephen King horror movie. But when I watching it, I couldn't process what I was seeing, because I'm like, this movie's not trying to scare me. Not really. It's just trying to go from scene to scene that somebody's written up with what they might think is scary from point to point. But it's got story threads that sort of connect and then bounce off of each other and don't really go anywhere. And outside of Clancy Brown's delivery on his lines, which are great, it's not funny. Not really. I mean, there are funny moments, but it's all inadvertently funny. So it left me with this big hole of like, okay, that's 148 that I spent, and I'm not really sure what you were trying to do other than sort of leave me hanging on what's going on. And, they kind of capped it off, because for a production thing at the end of the movie, this movie ends on Little House on the Prairie like vignettes of all the characters that have been killed
So weird
in this movie.
Yeah.
Like you're watching, like, Like it would be like you see the car going away, and it's like, well, if this was a Lifetime movie where the couple's happy, and here's all the little moments, it'd be great. It's all these smiling actors who have just. It's like a twisted version of Predator. It's the Predator ending made kind of dumb, and so it just, I can't say I'm not going to say I like it. I found enjoyment in it for different reasons, but not because of the story. And I don't know if Edward Furlong. I don't want to come down on the guy that was a kid back then, but dude has got like one note, and he hammers that one note through the whole movie with what he says and what he does and how he reacts to things. And all of this mixed up kept making me going, all right, who's the hero? Is he the hero? Is Anthony Edwards supposed to be the hero? Is Drew the hero? He was doing the most stuff for a while there. It's very discombobulating. And I'm not sure if they just ran out of time. I'd like to know. Or if somebody actually went, we're good. We're signed off. It left me not feeling like I wasted my time. It left me feeling like, oh, this is going to be a fun conversation with Rob and Graham. It's not going to be like, I watched this great movie. It's like, oh, we're going to talk. So good in one sense, bad from a watching a movie sense.
Well, I completely agree, because my first note here was that it's an incredibly uneven movie.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't know what it wants to be, right? There's these like darkly sinister moments that are capped with like Clancy showing his food at the dinner table, right? Out of like ABC food, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't, it's not a horror movie. It's not a comedy. It's not a teen angst movie. It's not a like weird retrospective look at grief sort of movie. It's kind of trying to be everything and giving us nothing. So the unevenness about it really hits hard too, because there's a lot of scenes where you're just like, whoa, that's the moment where you should be worried, when that dog doesn't have a pulse and it's still breathing. Like, why is this even a question? Like,
when your buddy from school who you were looking for shows up after a day covered in blood, and you just kind of go, hey man, what's up?
Hey, what's up, bro? Yeah.
Now, that made me think of something that I want to do in a comedy sketch. So okay, this is not the way it goes down in the movie, but this is how I read it in my head while I was watching the movie. Kid shows up, he's bloody. He's like, hey, my dog died. And Edward Furlong is like, okay, I'll get my shovel. And I thought it would be so funny if someone came to you like a dear friend and was like, hey, a loved one of mine passed away, a dear friend, a family member, and I just want to confide to you that I've lost this person. And your first reaction is to say, I'll get my shovel.
I'll get my shovel.
It's the answer to everything.
What the hell?
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's such a good friend.
Well, Bill, what was your other one? You said the next one was a little bit lighter.
Yeah. Such a long list of things that don't make sense, but it made me laugh because I have an understanding of spatial representation and mass and gravity and weight, like all the general ability to know these things like every other human on the planet. How are these freaking kids dragging this heavy ass dog and this grown man, a Clancy Brown, across what appears to be at least a mile or more, possibly a couple of miles of rough terrain over a log barrier to get them to this place to bury them? And if any of you out there, and I'm sure there are many of you, have dug a hole not even of human size, that takes some time and some energy. These kids they neither one of them together is carrying a Clancy Brown to the Indian burial ground. I'm like, good God. It's not the supernatural stuff that gets me, but when it's like basic physics, and the movie just goes, nah, I'm not gonna worry about that. It drives me insane. It drives me absolutely insane.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. It's really silly. But the other side of it is just like, do we want to watch that? But I think there's a way that we can they could have demonstrated that, right?
They could have built a stretcher and hooked it to their bikes, thrown their bike. I don't even need to see the bikes going over the thing. I'll interpret that. But to see drag, just a scene of them dragging his body on the litter off into the distance fixes the problem for me as much as it can do.
They also have this problem of having the swamp sometimes towards the end and really never showing it until then. It's something they do a really good job in the book of Creed really struggling to get to the burial ground, and that is a chapter, right? That is something that you're oh my god, this you want to bring someone back to life, it's gonna take some time. And totally not represented in this movie whatsoever. The other thing I have is that the animals and humans that are brought back to life in this film seem to have different rules based on the scene. In Pet Sematary, it's they come back to life, they're just a weird demon version of themselves. Have an urge to kill, not at all able to hang out with. But in this, we get dinner with Clancy. We get the dog sometimes wanting to be Drew's friend and then sometimes wanting to attack Drew. Not to mention the fact that Clancy can talk. I mean, and I guess they could talk, but hold conversation in a way that feels what are we doing here? I don't need there to be a show Bible for this thing, but I would like some consistency on what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Especially, you know what? Maybe a regular person would clean that poor dog after it's been to the vet, and instead of just leaving it caked with mud and dirt for the entire movie. Now I get that. I think the dog's supposed to turn darker, which would have been scarier. If there had been a scene the dirt won't come off. That would have been cool. They come back, but the dirt doesn't. Something to creep it up. Otherwise, it's just weird.
Can I just say also, this is a little bonus thing I didn't really like, is that there's some really unnecessary animal gore in this movie that doesn't add to the horror element of it. Why do I need
Pet Sematary?
The kittens?
Why the kittens at least have been attacked, right, by the zombie dog.
Right.
But why, when Anthony Edwards calls the other vet, do we have to see him sawing off a dog's scalp, right?
Yeah.
I just don't like that that's something that's put into this script because it's called Pet Sematary, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the dog autopsy was just gratuitous and nasty.
Yeah, it was not.
Didn't need to happen.
And because the movie didn't earn it either. I don't know what it would need to do to earn it. It's just added it's kind of like a Hostel type thing. This is just a movie that's going to be gross to be gross. You know? And it didn't work. But Graham, was there anything specifically you disliked about this film?
Yeah, there was. So why is Jared Rushton a school bully? Because the script needs him to be. Mm-hmm. There's no character diving into the character. Why is this person the way he is? Why is Clancy Brown a total psycho? Yep. Right? Because the script needs him to be, right? There's no sort of looking into who these characters or who these people are. It's just what we need to do to tell the story. There are lots of things, like we talked about Clancy Brown in the dinner sequence, and that was a totally squandered scene to me. So to the kids, Clancy Brown is a much cooler person now that he's dead, but he just assaulted his wife, and she's in the kitchen,
Yeah.
and you see her pain, you see her, torment for what happened to her, and she's sort of getting, this guy's insane, but the kids are seeing a lighter side to him, and they didn't explore that. They also had Clancy Brown was a boyfriend of Edward Furlong's mom in high school. And so they could have done a Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Pet Cemetery style at the end of the movie, which they didn't capitalize on at all. But there's just a lot of like no character development. People are mean spirited just for the sake of being mean spirited. There's nothing deeper than that.
Yep.
Right. Like there's no reason for Clyde Parker, the bully played by Jared Rushton, to be like holding the kid's face to the motorcycle wheel as it's spinning and be like, I'm going to make you go back and see your mom because I'm going to kill you. And you're like, why?
Yeah. Why are you so pissed?
Why are you such an asshole? Like, if you're gonna be an asshole, that's fine, but like at least explore why, not just because the script needs you to be.
Yeah, he's the son of a movie star, and first of all, you would think that he'd have some inheritance or something, but like, and that would be a great way to be like, and this bully is poor, right?
Yeah.
Something, please.
But the Billy's not poor because he has an amazing winter scarf.
That's true.
And
And
he wears the entire movie.
And he's got that motorized bike.
Yes.
But he does hate him from jump.
Yeah.
Straight out of the gate.
And I understand that, like, when a new kid comes to town, like I was a new kid when I moved to a new town when I was 10, that like sometimes you're like the target, but they never explore that. It's just, I'm mean, I'm nasty because script says I'm mean and nasty. I would love to see the director explaining the scene to the characters.
Yeah.
I just need you to be an asshole. Like, that's the direction.
Yeah.
I would have been so happy if they'd managed to turn it into a thing where, of course, we know that Clancy Brown's character, Gus, kills Clyde. And apparently, he takes him to the cemetery and brings him back. We are told you bury your own. How is he anybody's own? It would have been something if they'd been like, he's Gus's kid that he won't acknowledge, or something like that, where
the bastard child of Gus.
Anything that would have put a real twist on it, that would have provided some kind of motivation, like, Gus is paying attention to you. Anybody that Gus pays attention to, whether it's good or bad, like he hates them. It would have added so much to his character. But like you said, Graham, we don't get, the movie's only so long, but it could have spent the time a little bit better and made us, and again, like I said, make it make more sense. I'm right there with you.
Just develop them a little bit more so we understand why they're jerks.
Yeah.
And if they're just total sociopaths, like explore mental illness. Like, do something.
That is probably the tagline for this episode, for this movie. Do something. Exactly. Don't just make a movie. Do something.
That's our new grading system. Do something or you're fine. That's it.
Yeah. Well, moving on to our last segment before we rate this film. Well, we've got a lot to say on this episode, so we're going to bring it to a close. This is where we talk about the amusing moments that we like to call building a doggy door. And I guess we're back to me, Bill. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Well, I'm going to save the one I'm most in favor of to the very end. So I'll start with, it was amusing to me that Edward Furlong's character brought his cat to school, because that is such a like freshman in high school or 8th grader sort of thing to do. Like, I remember I was a freshman.
Grade school, not high school.
Well, I'll tell you a story. When I was a freshman in high school, so 15 years old, I think, I got an electric guitar. I was taking guitar lessons, and you bet your ass I brought that electric guitar to school, ostensibly to practice before class and after when I'm waiting for the bus. But I just wanted to show off that I had an electric guitar. Like this kid, I don't think he wants to show off that he has a cat, but it is such a thing to do, right? Like this is my new thing and it's coming with me. I had a neighbor growing up who, when he'd get new shoes in like middle school, would sleep with the shoes like it was a teddy bear. Like these are my new Nikes. I get it. These are just, I love it. Made me laugh because that is such a kid thing to do. Take the cat to school no matter what. And of course, it ends poorly.
I could get behind your guitar 100%. Putting a cat in your jacket and taking it anywhere is a physical impossibility.
It is a bad idea.
It's just, no. I have 2 cats. Graham, you have a cat. Make it do anything, and more or less make it be quiet if it doesn't want to be quiet. It's not possible. It's just, I get that it's been vague that he's trying to find something to hold on to. He's lost his mom. He's doing anything to kind of fill that void. But dear God, I mean, it'd been different if he'd put the cat outside the window of the school or something like that. But all he's going to come away with is a bunch of claw marks on his cool shirt. That's it.
Yep. Well, Bill, what's something you liked or found amusing? Sorry.
So many, like, this whole movie is largely an amusement at the end of the day. And I'm going to say thank you for that movie right there, because it made me laugh in a lot of ways, even though you didn't mean to. So the very beginning of the movie, which I was afraid, we were seeing Renee, Jeff's mom, come down. She's doing her acting in Castle of Blood or whatever this is. Dear God, I thought it was the movie. This is the movie. We're so screwed because she looks like Lucille Ball. That can't be. That's not a good start. But she's filming the movie and she has her big scene and there's water everywhere. There's Chekhov's electrical box laying there. She gets electrocuted. That's how Jeff's mom dies. She dies on stage in the water. Once again, our good old friend electricity making its debut in a horror movie as she's being electrocuted. And Darlene Flugel, she's great, I think, in that part. She was on Hunter for a little while, so anybody that does that, go to my book. She sells her electrocution like mad. It's great. Screaming her head off, doing the whole 9 yards, smoke flying. The whole time, the director's up in his chair, and he just keeps screaming, cut, like that's going to do anything. What? Not help her, not turn off the electric, not anything, not knock her away. He's just screaming, cut. I'm like, I hope somebody turned around and slapped him in the back of the head after that, because it was just stupid, but it made me laugh.
Yeah, terrible. It really goes to show you how bad Hollywood is. But I did like that we open with an electrocution death and we end with an electrocution death, much like in last week's episode of Sometimes They Come Back Again, where we open with an electrocution death and we end with an electrocution death. Mm-hmm. Somehow, Graham, we're putting it together that in Stephen King films, electricity is the thing that ends the demon. So
sometimes they don't pay their electric bill. Sometimes they do.
Sometimes the electric man comes back to roost. Now, my final amusing moment, I'm just going to pose a question to everyone. Did Anthony Edwards fuck a dog in this movie?
I think he got to third base.
Yeah, I think he got to third base.
Too close.
So if anyone hasn't watched the movie, I will save you the raunchy details. But he's having a dream that he's having an intimate moment with his wife, late ex-wife, to be.
Were they divorced? Because they kept saying they're working on their marriage.
They're divorced, yeah. They're separated. At least separated.
Oh, so they're trying. They kept trying to get back together. Okay, gotcha. Sorry.
And very important detail. If they were
not really, it's just me being me.
And as he continues on, he looks up and her head turns into the zombie Zowie dog head. And then he wakes up and the dog's on top of him. And it really is like that old joke my dad used to say. I had a dream I was eating 100-pound marshmallow and I woke up and my pillow was gone. And in this sense that I was dreaming that I was having sex with my late wife, and a dog was on top of me. I don't know.
And I have fleas.
Yeah, it was very unsettling.
And
moment.
rabies after he bites him.
Yeah, exactly.
It is so messed up. And that dog head is on par with like the animal heads in the Dragnet movie with Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks. It is so bad. Like it's so awful and so hilarious. It's just too funny to see. Look, folks, if you don't watch the movie, I'm going to say go find the scene. I don't care how weird it makes you feel. Go watch it. It's beyond reproach.
It's much like the Dream Warriors, Freddy the Nurse scene.
Which go online and watch the original cut of that.
Oh, really?
So Never Sleep Again is a documentary.
Oh, yeah, I saw that
right?
there. Yeah,
and so they actually have the female model wearing a Freddy face.
Is that not in the final cut?
No.
I could have sworn
she just sort of turns into Freddy, but in the cut scenes, there's an actual like the
that's
model
what I was
is
thinking of. It must be just from that scene I watched. Yeah,
crazy stuff.
very crazy. Well, Bill, what's your crazy final amusing moment?
This was such a hard pick, but I had to go with this one. There's the penultimate chase where Gus is trying to kill Amanda and Drew. He's chased Drew all over the house. He's run him out. I mean, I gotta say, Drew, for a husky kid, he can move. He can move when he needs to. They take off in the station wagon, which for some reason Amanda refuses to drive over 55, even though I know it will go faster than that. He steers them into the path of an oncoming truck that is hauling something. And it flips and it crashes. And it is a load of potatoes. Fresh off the farm, and we are treated to this scene where they scream. The truck rolls over on its side onto the car, and somehow almost all the potatoes wind up inside the car.
Yeah,
on top of the two of them. And if they weren't killed by the impact, the potatoes have crushed them to death. And we see, I think it's Amanda's hand sticking out of the spuds, a bit of blood rolling down it. And I'm like, who the hell was taking enough coke that day to think that the traumatic truck crash does the job? Yeah. Don't need it. This movie has been filled with fake blood and gore for no reason for 50 some minutes at this point. But they went, no. I got a better idea. Let's fill it with potatoes. Just so traumatic. I've never actually thought that part of my brain would melt. This is a point that came pretty close. So good on that. Yes, exactly. The potatoes didn't want to kill. They were innocent. They were just victims of the situation.
Yep. Killer taters. Well, Graham, we're almost time to rate, but we got to know what you found most amusing.
Well, how about the character that's sort of like Anthony Edwards' new girlfriend, but not really?
Oh, yeah. Like, why was she in the film at all?
Yeah. And then she like puts on the dress, which leads to her inevitable murder. But like, we've talked about like not developing storylines or characters, but like, there was never really a romance between the two, was there?
No.
The movie alluded to it, but the characters were never like into each other.
No. I mean, she maybe, but never. Like, that's a big stretch, and that's only going from like Edward Furlong's character being like, "You're not my mom" vibes, you know?
She is literally there to lust over Renee's clothes.
Yep.
She likes the clothes more than Anthony Edwards.
Because she's not there for him.
Let me paint a picture for you folks, because I love Graham's pick. Marjorie, this babysitter, housekeeper, she loves these clothes so much that she enters a scary situation in the classic creaky attic. And oh my God, I'm the only one in the house. We know something bad's happening. And she's scared to death until she sees this rack of clothes. And she's like, ooh, sparkly. And she magpies the hell out of it, man. She's just like, time to play dress up. I
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that she gave me big Penelope Ann Miller vibes with her red hair and kind of the way she looks in this movie, I'm like,
she's
girl,
totally Penelope Ann Miller, but not
because not smart at
what's
all.
crazy is that these both Pet Sematary 1 and 2 are directed by the same person who's a woman, but we still go to, oh, there's a pretty dress. Let me put it on. I'm a girl. You know, like, I don't know. It's just so stupid and lame.
There's too much of this movie that I feel like it has to be that, like, just like how the director wanted it to be following Ellie Creed and it ends up being just new character Edward Furlong. Like, I feel like there was a lot of people dipping their thumbs in the pie of like, well, now the story should have like an electrical scene and the bully should be a ghost and all this sort of stuff. And probably just, I bet after like the 10th note that they couldn't get out of, it was just like, fine, all these notes, you'll see what sort of movie you
whatever
get. Yeah. It's uncomfortable. Well, you know what's very comfortable? How we rate these films. Bill, would you like to explain to any new viewers how we go about this?
Absolutely. We call this section that we end our show with 5 Nights for $1. And back in the day, if you'd gone into a video store, things that used to exist, younger people, if you're watching, look it up on Wikipedia. I'm sure it's there. You might have seen a rack or a shelf somewhere in that store, might have been a bunch of movies on it, and it might have said something like 5 nights for $1. You could go in, you could grab a movie, you could throw $1 down, keep it for one night, keep it for 5 nights. It was up to you. I mean, the bargain depended on how you felt about that movie. And that's what we do here. We do not rate our movies against other movies in the series, even though we're doing sequels. We don't technically or directly compare them to anything that's come before or after. Not even the ones just within our own little realm, just this movie. You've watched it. You've gone in, you've traipsed through the Pet Cemetery. You've gone a hell of a long way. You've crossed the Indian burial ground. Your dog's outside, all dirty with red eyes glowing in the door. And you've thrown your, for some reason, bloody dollar down on the counter, which the guy behind it does not question at all, because this is the Ludlow blockbuster. And you got your movie and you pick Pet Cemetery 2. You've gone home. You've watched it like we have. This is the question. How many of those 5 nights are you going to keep Pet Cemetery 2?
Well, who would you like to go first, Bill?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So, thought long and hard about this up until the last 20 minutes talking to you boys, and I've changed my mind, which is always a great one. So, I'm going to give Pet Cemetery 2. It's going to remain, I'm going to say this very specifically, it's going to remain in my house for 2 nights. The reason being, first night, I've barreled through. I've had the exact same reaction because we've all shared, that I've shared with you. But I found out, because I'm intrigued by the music in this movie, I've gone and I looked at the credits. Tracy Lords has a song in this movie, which is very interesting.
I didn't know she was a musician.
Yeah. No, I don't think a lot of people did. And here's the other thing. I certainly didn't know that Edward Furlong was a musician.
Yes. Yes.
Which has been brought to light, which I'm going to give all the credit where credit's due to our buddy Graham here. He shares this knowledge a little bit before showtime. And now that I've learned this, because as I've watched my movie, Graham in this situation has just sent me this text that I've looked at. Now I've put my movie, left it in the VCR, and I've now spent a whole day at Camelot Music trying to track down Edward Furlong's Hold On Tight special edition LP. I have been captivated by this flat note actor. I want to see if he's a flat note musician. Not going to spoil it for you, but go with that. So that's what's happened. I've watched this movie. It was great talking about it with you guys. All these things are. At the end of the day, that's all it was. It was great talking about it with you. This movie is a stinker beyond words. But it has this thing about it. Like some of these movies where we're finding is you learn a little something somewhere in the movie and the credits and what you've watched that makes you want to go find out something about it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. That's what we do. So I'm going to have to keep it for another day just for reference if I need to go back and watch the credits again. So 1 day view, 2 day keep. Somewhere out there, I've just paid a ridiculous amount of money to get in that overseas catalog that used to be in the back of the record store where you pay like 9 times value to get that record you can't get, just waiting for my copy of Hold On Tight to appear. Thank you, Graham.
Well, that's great, Bill. The thing here is that, as stated earlier, the Ramones also still do the theme in this one.
Yes.
Like in the previous one. I'm sure it's not a new composition. I'm sure they just had the rights from the last one. While Graham fixes his headphones, I'm going to give my rating, and then Graham, you're going to close us out.
Gotcha.
With your rating. I too am keeping this for 2 nights. I plopped my dollar down so that I can barrel through the first night, much like you, Bill. And the second night, I'm going to go, what did I miss? And I'm going to skip through and figure out the scenes I liked, the scenes I didn't like, and understand what they were trying to do and what ended up going wrong and pinpoint where it went wrong. Because I still have not pinpointed the moment where I'm like, because I don't know what order this movie was shot, but at some point something went wrong, and it had to be an executive or 5 that made this thing go wrong. So 2 nights from the movie store for Pet Sematary 2 for me. How about you, Graham? For $1, how many nights out of 5 are you keeping Pet Sematary 2?
I don't mean to be overly harsh, but I have reasonings behind this.
Okay.
I am keeping this movie for exactly 100 minutes,
Okay.
which is the length of the movie. And then I'm
right.
going to look at my watch, and I'm saying to myself, is the movie store closed? And do I have time to get there and return it for another movie I could watch tonight? And so I'm driving frantically downtown. The store closes in 5 minutes, and I don't want to be a jerk.
Of course not.
So I get there just in time. I return Pet Sematary 2 and exchange it for 1994's Brain Scan.
Oh.
Also starring Edward Furlong, horror film from the 90s.
Love it. Love it. Well, Graham, thank you so much for joining Bill and I. Can you let everyone know a little bit about Pumpkin Spice Podcast, what we're trying to do with the show, and then what we have coming up next month?
Yeah, I mean, like we're still diving into franchises. We have a franchise that we're diving into this Halloween season, but throughout the year, we go on little road trips around America, and we may be going international soon.
Yep.
We did go to Canada once.
Sure.
So we have been
North
international,
America.
but outside North America, yeah. And just kind of trying to find the best horror movies or the most interesting horror movies from each state and possibly each country.
Yeah, it's great. All of the Pumpkin Spice episodes for this year are behind the Bill and Rob's paywall, so you can go and grab them there. But all of this season that we're releasing next month will be available to the public. There's plenty of episodes in the free feed of both Bill and Rob's and Pumpkin Spice podcast. But if you want everything, you gotta go behind that paywall, which is where this video and this episode will live next week. Or further on, because it will not be living in perpetuity on the Twitch stream. Now, Bill, any final words before we sign off today?
Just that do what I do when it comes to these two and this particular genre. If you've got friends that are kind of really into a thing, but they're having fun with it, and they want you to watch stuff, but they're not wanting you to watch it just because they know you won't like it. They're generally interested in it, and you think you'll have a little bit of fun with it. Give it a try. It might not always pan out, but I've said many times, I'm not a horror movie guy, and these movies are kind of reinforcing why I'm not a certain kind of horror movie guy. I am learning. I'm a little bit, depending on the movie, story and who made it, but give things a shot, because it's kind of fun to dip into what your friends are into. Gives a little more common ground, and that's kind of what this show is all about in the first place. So just want to reinforce that you can have even a bad movie can be a good time if you talk about it with your buddies.
Totally. Well, thanks you all for joining us. Thanks for everyone who's watching on the Twitch stream, and we will see you next time on Bill and Rob's An Excellent adventure.